Welcome everyone to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Hey, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am super fantastic. I am wearing I don't know if you can see it,
Oh,
Valentine Wolf t-shirt
oh, yay!
because they just played at Dragon Con.
That's right. Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Yeah, Kyle just got back from there. I can't remember if she ran into them or not. I'm sure she saw them around somewhere though. But that's great. Yeah, Valentine Wolf. They do our theme song, and as well as the music that Cammy plays in the background when Cammy talks. They helped us with that. They are very cool. Check them out on Facebook. They're awesome. Cammy, what are we talking about here today? What's the
Today,
topic? Yeah,
yeah, we're talking about a famous Britain woman, Boudica.
that's right. Yeah, so she's pretty legendary. This was a while ago. We're talking like 60 CE is when they believe the revolt happened, and when she died. Yeah, and so yeah, she died somewhere between 60 and 61 AD CE, whatever you use, Anno Domini, right? That's what it stands for in Latin.
Yes.
And so Cammy's got a story of this awesome warrior woman, and then we'll talk about some of the history behind it. It's pretty nice, pretty straightforward. If you've listened to some of the other ones that are kind of like Roman based or Roman source based, then you'll be familiar with it. But yeah, good deal of fun here. So Cammy, hit us with that story.
Sure. I'd like to thank my father for bringing this to my attention.
Ooh.
And I used penelope.chicago.edu, Boudica, and ThoughtCo Biography of Boudica. Tall with ruddy hair, like a long flame exhaling to her waist, this woman stood, her eyes a fierce fire, her tunic brightly colored, fastened at her neck with a golden brooch. As she spoke, her voice gravelled and booming, and her people listened. Rome had for 20 years pressed into their land, the empire hoping to gain foothold and rule in this distant place. They needed the cooperation of the Britons, something they didn't have yet. The Britons happy had been happy to pay their dues for roads and clean water, but they stopped short of willfully complying, for they feared outright occupation and mistreatment of their people. So Boudica, standing tall above her fellow Britons, roused them with these words: "If you weigh well the strength of our armies, you will see that in this battle we must conquer or die. This is a woman's resolve. As for men, they may live or be slaves. I am not fighting for my kingdom and wealth now. I am fighting as an ordinary person for my lost freedom, my bruised body, and my outraged daughters." First, she marched on Colchester, sacking the town and tearing apart the temple of Claudius. Then she marched to Longthorpe, 80 miles away, and defeated Cereus. On she went to Londonderry and slaughtered the Romans there, looting the city. But when the troops marched on to Manchester, the Romans were ready. They used the valley to flank the Britons and rained arrows upon their chariots. Lacking breastplates, many fell. When they tried to turn back, their fallen impeded them. So there was Boudica standing on her chariot, her hands loosened from the reins, and her daughters, who had led the charge, still beside her, and 80,000 Britons fallen to the ambush behind. The woman stood, put something to her lips, and then the great links of red hair flowed down and covered her now slumped body, the hero fallen to her own hand.
Very nice. I mean, that's not nice.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Very terrible.
this is a pretty interesting story. It's pretty nice as far as like the primary sources go, or of the time. It's two famous Greco-Roman sources, Tacitus and Cassius Dio. I'll start with kind of a look at just a little bit on them. We've mentioned Tacitus before. In fact, very recently we did, because I mentioned him during the Days of the Week episode that we did. That was the last episode. And he was a famous historian, born 56 AD, died 120 AD. And he was a historian, politician. He's regarded as one of the best scholars. He wrote Germania, about like German people and things like that, the tribes at the time. And he's a lot of his work survived. And Cassius Dio, or Lucius Cassius Dio, is one of the very similar. He was born in 155 AD, so he was just a little while after Tacitus was dead. So it's actually pretty interesting. We have in some of the sources I read, I mean, Tacitus literally got to talk to people who were a part of this like in Britain, during these revolts. And the Roman takeover was like pretty like textbook colonialism. Like, we think of the like 14th or the 15th, 16th, 17th century when we think of colonialism. But Rome, like, this was very, very similar to what we would consider like modern, ironically British, like to the Americas or India or something like that, colonialism. And Boudica was just someone who was in this. I thought of this idea. I've actually been listening to lectures and great courses stuff from these professors, Jennifer Paxton and Patrick Allett. They have really good coursework on England and stuff like that. And it's really cool. I've been trying to like figure out like a little bit more about British identity in general, because it's really interesting. They're like, Boudica is she is a Briton. She was like someone who spoke like a Gaelic based language essentially, and so she had been there for quite a while. Her what Iceni or Icenia is the tribe that she was queen of with her husband, King Prasutagus. Prasutagus.
Is that like a romanization of his name?
I really, or it might be a romanization of the name. Yeah, I don't know.
Because
Gaelic's
when I looked
weird.
at it, it looked very similar to like a Latin
It
name
doesn't.
or
Yeah, it
something.
doesn't seem Latin enough though. And this was pretty early. It is hard to say like how yeah, like how like what's the idea behind that name. But to me, I think it's just a straight up Gaelic name. I mean, Gaelic is pretty wild, and there's different from like Irish Gaelic, Welsh. It comes from Gaelic. Like it's a whole like its own stem of a language. So there's a lot that kind of goes from that. But yeah, they were just chilling. They in this area Iceni, along what is it, the northeast coast, I think, of England. And the king, they paid tribute to the Rome. I mean, they were like they were kind of doing it, they were going along with it. And it was basically yeah, as far in 43 AD, the Iceni tribe allied with Rome. They just decided, let's just do it. And the king actually in his will wrote that half of his inheritance should go, or half of his wealth should go to his kids, his daughters, and then the rest should go to basically, I think it was Emperor Nero at the time, or the Roman
state.
colonists. Yeah. And but there was some mistreatment there, and it was weird. I think they ended up taking out like, or wanting to take the whole thing. And basically after this mistreatment, Boudica decided to help lead a revolt. I mean, she obviously had a lot of sway. It's hard to say how they kind of thought of women, but obviously if, and like, having a social status, but obviously if Boudica was able to rally these people, the tribesmen, they didn't maybe have the same kind of thoughts that the Romans did at the time. So she had quite a successful attack and sacked Londinium, which is now London. And the thing after that though was the Romans were able to kind of retreat, reinforce, and then just come back and storm. And as many as like 30,000 Britons were killed during this too. I mean, the Romans, or the Boudica's forces apparently were extremely, like, just no mercy, no prisoners. And yeah, from Tacitus and Cassius Dio, either it was she poisoned herself or died of sickness. I think it was Tacitus who said poison. I think Cassius Dio says that she might have died from sickness. And it's hard to say which one. I'm not sure how they felt. I'm wondering if like ritualistic suicide was big in the like Gaelic religion.
Well, could you imagine being captured by the Romans after you just
Right. Well, and
slaughtered?
I don't know if and they yeah, it's rough. Like they
Well, you'd be
had captured her
crucified if nothing
daughters.
else.
Yeah, they had, yeah, they treated her daughters horribly. They completely violated them. I mean, they yeah, it went both ways, absolutely horribly. This was pretty wild. And what I think is wild with Tacitus is he actually with his eyewitness accounts. So I'm thinking of like someone talking to their grandpa about World War II and writing it down. Tacitus actually feels, oh no, it was Cassius Dio that actually feels that. So Cassius Dio didn't have an exact. He was. I don't think anyone would have been left alive from the time he did, unless they were really old. But he had basically like almost primary hand accounts, the sons of the people that were involved, he could have talked to. And he writes that the Britons here were really victims of the Romans. Like this was just this was just abuse from the Romans completely here. And so it's pretty interesting to see sort of how that idea kind of formed in a very close to the event happening, like less than 100 years, pretty much, or just about 100 years after it happened. People were writing about it and were like, the Romans kind of sucked regarding this. So, I mean, over time,
Do you think it was like those Romans sucked, we don't suck anymore kind of idea? Or was it more like,
well, we
we
did
don't
an
like the state
episode.
now?
We did an episode on St. Patrick's Day, and I think that did a good job of showing us, because St. Patrick was a Romano-British citizen. He was someone who was like definitely, he spoke like a Gaelic-based language, like Welsh or some kind of Brittonic language, but he was distinctly like Romanized, and he was a saint. He was a member of the church. And so definitely through a lot of Britain, especially for, I guess, like the wealthier classes, they totally integrated with the Roman identity. And when the Romans left, they were really upset. And it persisted. The Anglo-Saxons even took over. Or got taken over by Roman religion and stuff like that. So I think it was like I think it was just bad, like stupid colonialism kind of adhering to it. I mean, in his will, Prasagustus's will, he wanted to pay tribute to the Romans. I think it's clear to see that there was kind of an open area for them to work together, but just something happened.
Nero.
What's that?
Nero.
Right.
Nero happened.
Yeah, that could definitely be it. I mean, I think about like with the lecturers that I mentioned earlier, Jennifer Paxton, especially her. She like I had I watched a television series where it talks about kind of the history of like Celtic peoples and stuff like that, and Celtic Gaelic are actually kind of interchangeable in some ways. And there's a belief that like the Gauls, the Celtic, those people kind of started like in what's like Spain, basically, and then like migrated. We're talking like a long time ago, and then migrated up through, and then eventually, like at some point, some of them went to the British Islands, and and I just think about like Julius Caesar 80 years ago, from the time of Boudica, the Iceni tribe joining with the British. He was just ripping through the Gauls. And I think a lot of people are more familiar with that. I mean, he would, they were just as tribal. They weren't a unified people. And that's what the Iceni, I think, were. And I mean, it makes sense by you have so much experience dealing with these people that have similar things. I love it too. When I look through all my sources, whenever they have pictures of like Celtic people, they always have pants. I don't know if you knew this, but like that was like a thing of the Gauls and other kind of Celtic and like Gaul people, Gaelic people. They had pants that they'd have like a spear and a wooden shield and pants. That was the defining factor, and it was true. Like that was what historians wrote about the people back then had pants, and it was weird to have pants. that was the tactical like upgrade they had. But so yeah, you can just imagine Boudica with her pants getting ready to fight. But yeah, it is. It's weird. I don't think we'll ever really know exactly why. But I mean, you can kind of think of more modern colonialism during the colonialism era, and how many times was there like a amicable, in air quotes, situation that some corrupt governor just started completely going overboard with, and with abusing locals. So yeah, it's pretty wild. I like looking at this story. The nice thing, and what I'll kind of end on, is how it evolved. It sort of it doesn't seem to have any like big significance after the writings of Cassius Dio and things like that. I mean, I guess it was just included in the history. You know, this was just another tribe. This was an amazing woman who kind of stood out. But I think other than that, it was sort of non-glamorous beyond that, and never really stuck out. But it was during the reign of Elizabeth I, in the 16th or so, you know, through the 16th and 18th century, through Queen Elizabeth I, we started to see her kind of Boudica become more important, specifically in British history. The works of Tacitus were rediscovered, and so people were kind of talking about this. And you know, this is thousands, or 1,500 years after the events. A lot's going on. We actually just talked about Queen Elizabeth I because of our Nathan Drake episode. Um, Elizabeth was under strains to fight against the Spanish Armada, and so there was this sort of allegory between her fighting the Spanish Armada, Britain, Boudica defending Britain against the Romans, and things like that. There was also a play in 1610 by a younger contemporary of Shakespeare called Francis Beaumont, and a man named John Fletcher, who wrote a play called Boudica, which was inspired by chronicles that were based off of this, and it was a British heroine play sort of thing. Britain Strike Home was a popular patriotic song in the 18th and 19th century, and there was a really popular poem in 1782 called Boudica, an Ode. Boadicea is another way to pronounce it back then. In fact, my mom, I was talking to her about it just yesterday, and she was like, "Do you mean Boadicea?" And I was like, "Well, you know, the C, Caesar, Kaiser, you know, the Latin kind of part of it." And that's the Welsh pronunciation. I'm gonna quiz you. Do you know how to pronounce it? It's Buddug.
Carrie.
Yeah, that's a good guess. So the DD makes a th sound. So
Okay.
I believe, and I think just a UG would be an ug. So I think it's Buthug. So I think so. Maybe our awesome Welsh listener can help us out with that. I'll say Google is completely unreliable. When you pop it into translate, you know, I could put like a Japanese phrase, and it'll the robo Japanese Google lady will sound perfect. When you put in a Welsh phrase and ask for it to like say it, it sounds like a robot from 1985 that's dying. Like I tried doing it, and it was just like Buzz. What? Buzz. What does that
You
mean?
know, there's a really great website just
Yeah,
called Forvo,
I think I
Forvo,
went there.
and they have people from
Those
different
areas. Okay,
places. So there would be like a Welsh person saying, perhaps. I mean, I
and
don't
that's
know.
I went. I did try another website, and it'll put like it's all robots, and it'll do like a British, so it'll be like Budug. So it'll pronounce the DD, but I know that the DD isn't. It's a th. So I think Gigi also makes that as well. Anyway, Welsh is crazy, y'all. Listen to our episode on Anun, spelled Annwn. That was really fun on Welsh myth. But anyway, and that Welsh name it has been like a semi-popular name. Like there was an actress named that. It means victorious in modern Welsh, and that it's a modernized Welsh name. I don't know how they would have pronounced it back then. I guess we don't really know exactly how Boudica would have said her name back then. It does seem like it is kind of Latinized, and Buthug might be closer to what than Boudica or Boudicea. But what's cool, so Budug or Buthug, the Welsh version means victorious or victory. And to further, you know, off of Queen Elizabeth I in the 19th and 20th century, Queen Victoria. Victoria, I don't know if you know, Cammy, means victory. And so there was another sort of like correlation here. Victoria also being seen as like a strong queen, you know, strong woman. Her poet laureate, Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote a poem called Boadicea as well, and during this time period, several ships were named after both the Queen Victoria and Boudica. She was also a suffragette symbol for the women's right to vote, and there's a funny belief that she was buried between platforms 9 and 10 in King's Cross Station in London, England. Although this was probably like a post World War II thing, so I just imagine that's right next to platform 9 3/4 is Boudica. That'd be cool. Maybe that's where Rowling got her inspiration for putting that there. But yeah. In conclusion, this is a really cool story. We know these events by the Roman historians. Unfortunately, not really. We don't have like a a British source, but it seems like from what was preserved, it's totally likely that this did happen in the way that it did, from the sources that have them itself. Like Cassius Dio himself even empathized with the Britons at the abuse of the Romans. I'll note that both Tacitus and Cassius Dio, I believe, were like Greek Roman as well. Cassius Dio especially was, and he actually wrote in ancient Greek many of his works. So maybe he was just like really empathizing with the Britons, like, yeah, we were there right before y'all, I promise. But yeah, Boudica, she's really cool. One more thing. I was exposed to her in Civilization 5. She was a playable character. It was really cool. She was like a leader of the Celts nation, and she had really cool like her empire played like a religious military game. And so because the Welsh or the Britons, especially the tribal nature of it, they had a really cool religion at the time that I definitely want to get into at some point. It's just a little hard to without the written resources. But yeah, so Cammy, thank you for your story. I think that was great to hear about it. Whatever happened to her, she's definitely a huge symbol. And as you know, we got to the 20th century, it was kind of cool to see this British tribe, Celtic, Gaelic speaking woman, queen, warrior queen, become like a huge symbol that even today is kind of thought of as like a national hero. So yeah, I love it. You can see there's modern statues of her, and it's pretty wild. So I love it. But excellent. Well, Cam, thanks so much for everything. I always appreciate your stories.
Thank you, Bryant.
Everyone, thanks for listening. Let us know what you think, and if you have any suggestions. We're getting ready for Halloween month soon. October's always really fun because we have
It's gonna be
stories.
spooky.
Yeah, we're really excited. So a couple more weeks and we'll have that. Check out the link tree in the description for all of our social media stuff, YouTube. Click the thumbs and stuff like that. So yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all I've got. Cammy, you good?
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, everyone, we will see you next time.
Oh.
Buthug.